Hey everybody, it is the Bark Tank. We are presented by Sugardale, and I am in the home office here. It's the off season. There is no off season. Hi everybody, it's Andrew Siciliano. Thank you for joining what is officially an off season episode of the Bark Tank. As we used to say, as I think everyone of the NFL says when you're asked, hey, how's your off season? Call me when the off season begins. There is no off season, save for like a 3.5 week window there, like mid-June, when the off-season program ends until the beginning of training camp for a lot of the support staff who have to be boots on the ground at the cross-country mortgage campus or any of the other 31 buildings before training camp. That window shrinks from like 3.5 weeks to like 2 weeks. So right now, and as we record this, we're a couple of days away from the conference championship games. There is no off-season. Next week, for example, yours truly, the Bark Tank, and the Browns content team will be on the road at the Reese's Senior Bowl, the 76th, if memory serves. Reese's Senior Bowl will be there all week because the Browns will be there all week, notably Bubba Ventrone, Browns assistant head coach and special teams coordinator. He will be coaching, head coach, one of the two teams, which will be invaluable for Browns player evaluation ahead of the NFL draft. Last year, there were 40 plus. Actually, I have the number right here. Andrew, go back to your email. Last year at the Senior Bowl, just looking ahead to the draft as the Browns have double-digit draft picks, 110 players were selected out of the Reese's Senior Bowl pool. Now, that includes players who were there early in the week that maybe didn't make it to game day, but did work out, did do interviews, but were in Mobile. Jim Nagy puts together a great roster, 110. So when you get to the draft in Green Bay, 43% of the draft last year was at the Reese's Senior Bowl. So we will be there. The Bark Tank will be there. And not only will Bubba Ventrone be there as a head coach, but Brown's D-line coach, and he did a great job. Not only, obviously, you had Myles, Garrett, Zadarius Smith, and Dalvin Tomlinson, and Obo, the rookies up there. I'm sorry, the veterans up there. But he did a great job developing the younger guys, like rookie Mike Hall, like rookie Jawan Briggs, and like Isaiah McGuire, who in his second year really came on and received a top 10 PFF grade for stopping the run grade for edge players last year, the entire NFL. Isaiah McGuire was top 10. I think he was 7. So Jacques Cesaire will be down there, as will the entire Browns scouting staff, most of it at least. And they're looking at these guys, and they're going to be some interesting players, not just players who you might want to target it to. There will be quarterbacks, certainly. But again, 43% of the draft came from there. Joel Bitonio came from there. Wyatt Teller came from there. Jerome Ford came from there. Last year, Jamari Thrash, Javion Cohen came from there. Nick Harris was a Senior Bowl alum. DeJuan Jones, the Rocket, Ronnie Hickman, James Hudson, James Prochet, on and off the roster the last couple of years. Those guys have been there, so we will be there. Look for those Bark Tank episodes next week. The reason we're doing this special pod today is that the Browns have their new offensive coordinator. It is official. It is Tommy Rees, who was last year the tight ends coach back in the NFL after being an OC in 2023 in Alabama with Jalen Milroe. And then for a couple of years before that at his alma mater, Notre Dame. You remember Tommy Rees started like 40 games as Notre Dame quarterback, won like 30 of them. Pretty decent quarterback there as well. He years ago got his teeth or sharpened his teeth or got his feet wet, whatever. I'm mixing metaphors here. As an NFL assistant in 2016 with the then San Diego Chargers. Shane Steichen, Ken Wisenhunt, Mike McCoy, just a great brain group there. He mentioned that on his introductory press conference, on his introductory podium earlier on, what's today? Thursday, as you're recording this. Anyway, some thoughts on Tommy Rees here. The 35,000-foot view, while Tommy Rees wouldn't say it, while Kevin Stefanski wouldn't say it, this certainly feels like, I think we all agree, a return to the offense we saw Kevin Stefanski's first 4 years. Now, you got to be player specific, and Rees hammered that down. Not going to say what we're going to run. You always got to tailor to your players. But if you look at the Tommy Rees hire, the Mike Bloomgren hire, I think, is as significant, truly, as the Tommy Rees hire. It feels like you're going back to what got you here the first 4 years, which is not only a run-heavy scheme. You generally throw more than you run these days in the NFL, say for maybe the Philadelphia Eagles and some others, but more of a wide zone, more of a play action. I think there's the key concept here. Scheme. And it's not just wide zones, a lot of power, a lot of gap. Look at Mike Bloomgren here and his run game. They ran more of a traditional offense, right? At Rice, where he was head coach. They worked in some more spread stuff his final year or two at Rice, but they were a double tight end, run the ball set at Rice. And that is really his roots with Callahan, Bill Callahan, the Browns' former O-line coach with the Jets. And before that, back at Stanford, Mike Bloomgren, this is, coaching when, they were running power 18 times in a row, right? When they had Andrew Luck, when they had Christian McCaffrey, and they just ran it down your throat. Not saying the Browns are going to run power 18 times in a row, but this feels like a return to that. Also, Kevin Stefanski, who didn't take questions at the beginning of the presser, but did give Tommy Rees an introduction, said, impressed since the minute he walked in the door. Tommy's only 32 years old, came in last year, as mentioned, from Alabama, and that they interviewed other guys, Darrell Bevel, most notably Clint Kubiak, who called plays last year in New Orleans, and Kevin has familiarity, worked together with him in Minnesota, but that Tommy was the guy that stood out. Anyway, I'm missing the point. I'm bearing the lead. Kevin Stefanski is calling plays again. You probably know that by the time you listen to this, and that feels right. As I'm sitting here, I'm not trying to be the company man, and I will say that sometimes, but I think it needs to be said here. I advocated that during the season. I understood why Kevin stepped back. He kind of needed to maybe not put out fires, but he needed to be in more rooms than just the offense and the quarterbacks, right? He needed to step back and take, I'll go back to my analogy of the 35,000-foot view, not only during the week, but on game day as well. And he handed those responsibilities over to Ken Dorsey. This feels right to take it back. It does. Look, it also signifies, and this is a change here. We know this. Andrew Berry said it when he was on the pod a couple of weeks ago. The quarterback room is going to look a lot different. It just has to. With Deshaun Watson's re-injuring, re-tearing of the Achilles, his timeline is exceedingly unknown. Look, it is up in the air. The surgery didn't happen until January. So do the math. And I don't know what kind of procedure it is, but don't take the Aaron Rodgers, Kyren Williams timeline, right? Kyren Williams with the Rams when they made their Super Bowl run in 21, tore his Achilles in July, also a much younger man, and he made it back in late December. That was the goal for Aaron Rodgers. He tore his last year in September, week 1, 9/11, and then he made it back to practice in late December, but the Jets were out of it, and he really was never medically cleared. They put him on the active roster, but he couldn't play, and they were out of it. It didn't matter. And if he could play, he probably couldn't move. I mean, it would have looked like, Dave Grohl when he broke his leg and they just put him in a throne and he played guitar. That's what Rodgers would have looked like, right? Not that he could play guitar, although watch the new Enigma thing. He's strumming along a little bit, or at least he tries. You get my point. He's not the Foo Fighters, but they would have just put him back there and, throw the ball, Aaron, don't move. Sit there. But they couldn't protect him. I digress. Deshaun's going to be a while. We know that. So the quarterback room's going to look a lot different. Tommy Rees did not want to get into, with good reason, like he's going to go, yeah, I love Jalen Milroe. Let's take him second overall. He praised Jalen Milroe, but he's not going to get into who he does and doesn't like. But he is an invaluable source in that building, having coached at Alabama and before that at Notre Dame for 4 to 5 years. Now, you got to look at who they played. It's not as if at Alabama in 23, they played Cam Ward. They didn't. Cam Ward, by the way, was at Washington State that year, not at Miami. They didn't play Cam Ward. They didn't play Colorado and Shedeur Sanders. But also Tommy Rees's scouting acumen from college, it doesn't just apply to the quarterbacks who you're drafting, right? It applies to all the other SEC guys or all the other guys that Notre Dame had played that he had to scheme against as the OC. What did Tommy Rees run? Well, Jalen Milroe ran the ball 161 times in 2023 at Alabama in less the Browns go out and get Justin Fields, for example, just throwing a name out there. That's not going to happen, obviously. But if you go back to Notre Dame, they were spread a lot, but they threw the ball, right? It was Ian Book at quarterback who, got a start actually in primetime 2 years ago with the Saints. It was Jack Cohn at quarterback, right? They were more stand of the pocket, throw the ball guys. Sam Hartman got there the year after, so that was not that offense. Hartman at the time was at Wake Forest, actually running with Kenneth Walker. But I digress. Tommy Rees, Browns OC. I think it's a return, I don't want to say to normalcy. It does feel right. And from where I sit here, I am encouraged. And I'm kind of excited to see what that looks like. Because the Browns last year scored the fewest touchdowns in the NFL. There's just no other way to sugarcoat it. The fewest touchdowns in the NFL. That's it. And throw in Rodney McLeod's 2 touchdowns. The fewest touchdowns in the NFL. You got to make it work one way or the other. And I think it's the right thing that Kevin says he's calling plays now and taking any suspense out of it, right? He opened the presser. I'm calling plays. I reserve the right to change my mind. See ya. Here's Tommy Rees. Yeah. No more who's calling plays. Why aren't you? Like, just get it over with now. Get it out of the way. I fully support that decision and announcement. Want to give you a quick 2 minutes as well on Myles Garrett. So on Thursday, the NFL announced the nominees for all the major awards, which will be unveiled at NFL Honors in a couple of weeks in New Orleans. It's now Thursday. Before the Super Bowl used to be Saturday night the last couple of years. It has been a Thursday event. Myles Garrett is up for Defensive Player of the Year. He won last year. I don't think he's going to win this year. I think it's a bad sign that the Pro Football Writers of America this week named Patrick Surtain, excellent defensive back for the Denver Broncos, as their DPOY. He's a deserving player. I think Myles Garrett deserves it more, and I think Myles Garrett deserves it in back-to-back years. Andrew, you're a homer. Maybe, but let me give you some support. And not just what Jim Schwartz said in December before the Ravens game, that Myles' advanced metrics are all better. Not what Kevin Stefanski said repeatedly in our pregame interviews on the Browns radio network or on the podium at the Cross Country Mortgage campus. But just some of the numbers here. Myles didn't lead the league in sacks. He entered Week 18 tied with Trey Hendrickson. He made a great TFL, blew up Derrick Henry on the first play from scrimmage, Week 18 in Baltimore, but then didn't get a sack in that game. Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. Didn't go the Browns' way that night. Trey Hendrickson, who was tied with Myles heading in to that final Saturday, then later in a primetime performance, got 3.5 sacks. Trey Hendrickson led the league. Tip of the cap to him. If he wins it, it's well-deserved. He finally gets some recognition. Not that he didn't get any, but he deserves an honor. But let me tell you this about Myles. So 14 sacks, second in the league, but he had 28 quarterback hits and a league-high 22 TFLs and 84 quarterback pressures, which is third in the league. He also forced 3 fumbles, had a fumble recovery. It's not a defensive play, but he had the blocked field goal, right? In Philadelphia, that Rodney McLeod ran back for a touchdown. Myles Garrett had a better season this year than he did last. He did. Remember, last year when he won, he only had like 1 sack the last 7-8 games. He's playing through that shoulder injury. He played through injuries early in the season, finally hit his stride. But don't forget those injuries early in the season, because I know they were still lingering late in the year. TFLs, and this is my soapbox here, TFLs should be counted as sack, not as sack. They, in my eyes, are equally as significant as sacks. As a matter of fact, while sacks are important, I think that cumulatively we should look at sacks and TFLs, and that is your big winning number for the year. Okay? Sacks and TFLs. Sacks and TFLs, Myles Garrett had 36. When I get ready for the Senior Bowl every year, and I did it for a decade on NFL Network, I'm not looking at advanced metrics. We'll get to that. There's always a spot on the broadcast for that. And when you are drafting, then you certainly want to look at them. But I look at TFLs first. TFLs. TFLs and sacks, add that number together. You're looking at a smaller school player, maybe a guy that wasn't in the Power 5 or maybe a guy that was D2. How do I judge how this guy plays as a defensive lineman, especially where stats only mean so much, the traditional stats? TFLs. How often is this guy in the backfield? Myles Garrett dropping Derrick Henry for a 2-3 yard loss on the first play from scrimmage in Baltimore is just as significant as a sack. If it was Lamar Jackson stepping up in the pocket and Myles sacking him for a 3 yard loss, it's the same play. The Ravens had the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Myles Garrett got into the backfield, beat the man in front of him, and tackled that man in the backfield. Isaiah McGuire, great TFLs this year, same thing. You're in the backfield. You tackled the man in the backfield with a football. It is a loss. Tackles and sacks and TFLs are the same for me. They're the same. Now, the sack gets the bigger reaction from the crowd. The sack is often like that third down, get off the field, bam, get the quarterback on a passing down play that hypes up the defense and the crowd and everything a little bit more. But they're the same net loss for the team in most instances. How often do you see Zadarius Smith when he was still with the Browns? Like, get a quarterback right by the line of scrimmage and then look at the yard marker and then look at the ref and lobby him for that sack. I used to love it. But the loss is the same, right? So Myles Garrett, in my mind, should still be Defensive Player of the Year. Here's some more advanced metrics from PFF. Pass rush grade. They look at all the film, they give it a number. Myles Garrett led the league, a 92.8 grade. Led the league. Okay. Total pressures, led the league, 83. Pass rush win percentage, led the league, 23.1. Pressure rate, led the league, 18.2. And then this, on pass rush attempts. All right. When the quarterback drops to pass. So when they know they're going to throw, Myles Garrett was doubled 30% of the time, which actually seems low, but it's a career high. Ask any coach when they start their game planning for the week, what's the first thing you do? All right. Defensive coordinators, it's like, all right, who are the guys we have to stop on that team? Who scares us? Who do we have to have a plan for? All right. And offensive coordinators the same way. How do I stop that guy? Who do I have to have a plan for? And the plan is for Myles Garrett. I mean, look at the Bengals game in Cincinnati in December. Like the one play, they don't double Myles, he gets to Joe Burrow. And that doesn't even take into account the plays where they did double him and he still breaks free and he chases him to the sideline. Offensive coordinators begin every week when they face the Browns. How do we stop Myles Garrett? And he still had those numbers with being double teamed as much as he was double teamed. So there is my pound the table for Myles Garrett. And now let's get a special guest in here. The man who hired Tommy Rees as his offensive coordinator. Might have thought he was losing him to North Carolina, but he kept him here. This is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski. All right, this is cool. This is a first. We've had players. We've had analysts. We got the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in the Bark Tank, presented by Sugardale. Kevin Stefanski, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, happy to be in the Bark Tank. Never been in a Bark Tank before.
I have never been in the Bark Tank either. We're taking it on the road to Mobile next week. I don't know if, how to take a tank on the road. But
I'll be down there. I'll swing by and say hi.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. We appreciate that. So Tommy Rees had his presser today. He's the new offensive coordinator, 32 years old, promoted from tight ends coach after 1 year in the building. Why Tommy Rees?
I think he's the right fit for us. And I've been fortunate enough to know Tommy for a few years, know what he's about, kept in contact with him as he was making his way down to Alabama, obviously calling plays at Notre Dame prior to that. Just thought highly of him as a coach. And then we were very fortunate to be able to add him to our staff last season, coming off his year at Alabama, and just being around him for a year and seeing how he operates, seeing how he works, seeing how he connects to players and coaches, just felt like he was the right fit for what we want to do with our offense.
Pull back the curtain if you wouldn't mind. Like, what's that interview like? Obviously, you interviewed other guys you knew, Clint Kubiak as well, notably there, Daryl Bevel. When you and Tommy sit down, what's that like?
Well, we kind of put him through the paces like we did with all of the other candidates, Andrew. And you mentioned we had some really good guys come in here that we were able to talk to. Very impressive. Learned a lot from each guy, and really put Tommy through the similar paces. Now it's different because he's in the building already, of course, but had him go through the same meetings that everybody else went through. Asked him very similar questions, and a lot of those questions, as you can imagine, some of it is getting to know you, but more of it is, hey, how would you think about this? How would you attack this problem? Take us through your experiences and why that would shape you in some of your decisions. And Tommy, as I think our fans will get to know, he's a young coach. I get that part in age, but sometimes you need to measure experience in something other than years. And I think Tommy, with being the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, calling plays at Notre Dame, calling plays for Nick Saban. I joked that calling plays for Nick Saban is akin to playing point guard for John Chaney. Any college basketball fans out there? That's a lot of experience that you gain. You learn so much in a year like that, and I think that's true with a young coach like Tommy.
And that's good Philly Big Five call back there as well.
I could keep going with these if you want. Yeah. I got more.
No, I'm sure. And look, you learn from the good ones. And Tommy mentioned as well the 2016 Chargers staff today and all those great minds, guys that went on to become head coaches as well. Shane Steichen and Philly, Nick Sirianni as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So you learn a lot. You also learn a lot moving around. Kevin, you played defensive back. You coach quarterbacks. You were in the tight end room. I think you were in the running back room as well in Minnesota. What did Tommy's year in the tight end room do for him? And how important is that? I remember Sean McVay a couple of years ago said, I want to move Thomas Brown from the running back room to the tight end room because one day he is going to get a call for a bigger job, and that gives you a different perspective.
That's what it is, Andrew. It's perspective. And Tommy, as a growing up a quarterback, playing the quarterback position, obviously being in that room, I think there's great value of that tight end room because you're so involved in the pass game, in the run game, in protections. Tommy's never had his hand in the dirt. Neither have I, and that's something that you go in eyes wide open and you even tell your players that. I told the running backs when I got hired in Minnesota and Adrian Peterson staring back at me, I said, all right, Adrian, here's your career numbers and here are mine, 0, 0, 0. And it's the idea being that, hey, I'm going to help you get better. And by doing that, I'm going to go find those answers. I'm going to work hard at getting those answers for you. So for Tommy, coming from a quarterback perspective and lens, if you will, he was able to broaden his perspective, broaden how he views the game. I would tell you, quarterbacks and quarterback coaches think they know everything, and I say that lovingly, and a lot of times they do, but they may draw up a block for the tight end. Hey, you got to cut off this 7 technique, and I'm going to draw it on the board here like this. There's one thing to draw it on the board. There's the other thing to take that tight end and say, here's how you're going to do it. This footwork, this step with this foot, this hand placement. There's so much nuance that goes into it. And I think for all coaches, certainly for somebody like Tommy, a younger coach with a quarterback background, I think there's great value in understanding all the nuance that goes to these other positions.
You're taking the play calling back. Explain to me 2 things. Number 1, why? And number 2, why you felt the need to come out today and just end the suspense and say, guys, I'm doing this.
Just so you'd stop asking me the questions, Andrew, is really what it was. No, listen, and I say this and I mean this sincerely. There are things that are really, really important to playing good offense, and a lot of them have nothing to do with play calling. We have a lot of work to do, Tommy, myself, this offensive staff, in putting back an offense that we feel really good about, and that's going to be sound, and that's going to play to the strengths of our players. There's a lot to do. The play calling piece comes whenever our first game is in September, but I just felt like it's the right thing for us right now. I told the press today, and I mean this, I reserve the right to change my mind. We're still in January, but I feel like that's the right thing for the team right now.
Kevin, the natural assumption is because you're calling plays again, that this is going to be a return to the offense that we saw the first 4 years, the offense that went to the playoffs twice. And it's not just Tommy, and it's not just you calling plays. It's Mike Bloomgren, for example, your new offensive line coach. And look, go back to Stanford. I think they ran power 18 times in a row. This speaks to the old offense. Are we wrong by assuming that and connecting those dots?
Listen, I understand the question, and I understand when you say all that. We never want to just go backwards. We want to go forward. So this is not where you just plop a playbook down on the desk and say, hey, dust this off. That's not what we're about. We want to be forward thinking in everything we do. Obviously, add Mike Bloomgren with Tommy's thoughts. There are certain things that we believe in as coaches, but we also know this game's changing. There are so many things that other teams around the league are doing that we feel like fits us, and some of it we haven't done here in the past, and that's okay. That's part of evolution. That's part of adapting in this football game, and I think there's so much when you look around the league. There's so much that changes year to year, certainly 5 years to 5 years. I've told you this before. If you put tape on from 5 years ago, there are going to be things that stand out to you and say, wow, things were different. If you put tape on 10 years ago, there's going to be even more things. So the game's evolving. How they officiate the game is evolving. The players that are coming into this league are evolving. The play style has evolved. And it's not just at the quarterback position. It's in a bunch of different areas. So for us, we certainly want to have that same mindset as we put our offense together. This is the Cleveland Browns offense for the year 2025. And here are the things that we're doing because it fits our players. That's going to be what's most important.
Two more quick things. Tommy made the point today, and part of this is the way the younger generation has been brought up. I know we're sounding a little bit old here, but about what is the why? Like for today's younger players, you got to explain why we're doing this. He emphasized that was part of one of his core fundamentals, I guess you could say, today. Was the why, if you're willing to look back, was the why ever in doubt last year? Seemingly, some of the offensive linemen or some of the players obviously never even got on the same page or maybe didn't get on the same page. The offense never got there. Was that ever a question now in retrospect?
I think, first of all, change is hard. Any type of change is hard for everybody for whatever the reason. I will tell you my goal, our stated goal, our purpose is making sure that we put together a scheme, an offensive attack that complements this football team. And certainly we didn't do that last season, and that falls on my shoulders. And I accept that. I own that. I also will fix that.
Tommy said that his number one, as we go down this path here, remaking the quarterback room, as Andrew said, is the goal of the next couple of months. That the number one thing he looks for in a quarterback is processing. Kevin, it's a long road, I know, between the start of the new league year and the draft in Green Bay. But when you look at quarterbacks, what's the number one thing that you must have? What do you look at first?
It's a great question. Something we talk about all the time, Andrew, all those traits that these quarterbacks have and which one is the most important. How do you weigh it? Obviously decision-making and processing is a huge part of this because the quarterback's making those decisions 40 times a game sometimes, whether it's run decisions, pass decisions, you name it. So that's certainly a big piece of this. There's so much of the physical tools that we can talk through, with accuracy probably being the top of the list, which we know. And again, look at the playmaking around our league that's happening at the quarterback position. So it's hard for me to single one thing other than to tell you, yes, decision-making is important. And I'd say physical skills, accuracy is super important. And then, as we all know, that person leading that huddle and breaking the huddle and being behind the center and leading the team out of the tunnel, all those things that come with that position, all those intangibles, the things that are easy to talk about, hard to measure, that factors into it as well.
All right, I lied. One last thing. As Bubba and Jacques get ready to coach at the Senior Bowl, Bubba's going to be a head coach and Jacques is going to be a D coordinator on the other team. So that's good. As someone who is coaching both the East-West Shrine game and the Senior Bowl, do you have advice for them?
Yeah, they have to win because if they lose, they're walking home is what I told them. It's a great, great, great experience for our coaches to get around those players. Obviously, for Bubba to be the head coach, which he's perfectly capable of, and I'm excited for him in that realm because I think that really fits Bubba's ability. He's a great leader of men. He's great in an organization standpoint, how to pull it all together. So I'm excited for him. Jacques gets to call the defense and really set his personality on a defensive unit. So it's great. opportunity for our coaches to display what they're capable of. It's also selfishly a great opportunity for our guys to get around these players. These are a lot of guys that you're going to be talking about when you get to the draft, whether it's round 1 to round 7 or after the draft. These are names that we're going to be talking about. So to have some knowledge of who they are, how they learn, how they are at practice, those type of things, it really is invaluable.
Yeah, you get the intel, and it's not just on the field because everyone gets the tape. The tape instantaneously gets uploaded. Jim Nagy's great with that. You get to be in the room, right? See how they are on the board, see how they get from Tuesday practice to Wednesday's practice to Thursday's practice, go back to processing. Like, who is this guy? Is he at Alpha?
That's right.
Is he not? Is he in the back of the room? Does he raise his hand? All that stuff. That's invaluable.
The year we coached the Senior Bowl, I was helping out with the quarterbacks, and it was Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, and Kellen Moore were our 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah. Who was the alpha?
Back then, I can't say who it was, and I'll protect everybody there. That's probably the statute of limitations hasn't expired on that one, so I'm going to protect.
I'm going to guess
guys.
Russell at the rookie symposium that year walked into an elevator, and I'm just me. I'm looking down on my phone like this. I'm not even looking. The elevator door open. I walked in, and door closes, and he is like all energy. Hi there, Russell Wilson. Nice to meet you. I'm like, okay, good to meet you.
I think back, that was an incredible experience. We had Bobby Wagner on the team still playing. Harrison Smith was on the team still playing. You mentioned Russell, Kirk still playing. Kellen Moore still calling it. He's got a big game this weekend. So it's just a very cool experience, certainly for the players, as you can imagine, which is, a showcase of their abilities in front of the entire NFL. But then as coaches, it's great for us as well just to be around those guys.
Well, it'll be a great experience for Bubba and Jock, certainly. Mobile, Mardi Gras is always fun this time of year. Hopefully the snow melts by the time we get there. Safe travels. We'll see you there. Hopefully at some point you get an off season, but I know that's not coming anytime soon. Kevin, thanks for doing the Bark Tank.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right, great. Kevin Stefanski, everybody. First time we've had the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in the Bark Tank. Oh, man, I forgot to ask him if he could bark like Jameis. Yeah, he wouldn't have done it anyway. That was cool. Anyway, friendly reminder, just wrapping up the point we made at the beginning of the show, the promotion we made at the beginning of the show is that the Bark Tank is going on the road. Tank on the road. We need to come up with some art for that or a, I don't know, can get like a Bark Tank t-shirt on the road. I mean, like we have t-shirts. Come on. Who am I fooling? But the Bark Tank is on the road, everybody. The Bark Tank is going to Mardi Gras in Mobile. And yes, I'm going to hammer this home next week. Mobile, Alabama, in L.A., Lower Alabama, is the home, the birthplace of Mardi Gras. Not New Orleans, where we're going to the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. Nope. Mobile is where Mardi Gras was born. And do not dare tell anyone in Mobile otherwise. There will be a parade, no joke, every single day of the week that we are there in Mobile. If you're in town, you can find me at Serta's Coffee Shop, right downtown. Can't miss it. On the parade route, SERDA''S. Shameless plug. I don't get any promotion from it, but I will be there every day, camped out with my laptop, doing my work. Come on down and say hi. It is a tradition truly unlike any other. Very often it's yours truly, an NFL and CBS star, Charles Davis, sitting there with our laptops. Come talk to Chuck. He would love to be interrupted from his work to shake your hand and take a photo. He loves it. That, too, is a tradition. In all seriousness, the entire Bark Tank staff will be down there, and we'll be bringing you shows. We'll be at practice every day. So practices go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Every coach, every GM is there. The NFL world is there. And look, maybe some of the 7-on-7 and the 11-on-11 stuff isn't necessarily great. What is great, though, and that stuff is good. You get to see the quarterback sling it, but they're not game conditions. What is great, the one-on-one drills. We're there for the one-on-one drills. So O-line, D-line, right? Guys from the ACC teeing off against guys from the Big Ten. Guys from the Mountain West, they're not Power 5, teeing up against the SEC, right? Guys from D2 schools, and there will be one or two of them going up against the big boys, not only on the trenches, but wide receiver DB stuff as well. That stuff is awesome. That's where, for example, 2 years ago, DeJuan Jones on Tuesday blocked out the sun at right tackle and made every single D lineman that he went against, and outside backer and 3-4 backer, made them look like school kids. It looked like Shaq high school video. It looked like LeBron at St. Vincent St. Mary's. That's why we're there. That's why the Browns were there. We will have that stuff for you. That's the good stuff. And we'll be talking to the Browns decision makers, Andrew Berry, Glenn Cook, Kat, Hickman. We'll all be there. And they will be on this show. It's good stuff. We will see you, everybody, in Mobile.